There is a conversation your body has been trying to have with you for years, not through words, through tension in your shoulders that never fully releases, through the tightness in your chest that arrives before a financial conversation, through the fatigue that lands right at the moment your life asks you to expand, through the pattern of illness that appears exactly when you are on the edge of something new and important. Your body has been speaking, and most of us, trained to live from the neck up, to think our way through our lives, to trust the rational mind above all other signals, have been politely, persistently, and very expensively not listening. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk is a psychiatrist and trauma researcher who spent 40 years studying one question. What does overwhelming experience do to the human body? Not just to the mind, to the body, to the nervous system, to the specific biological structures that determine how safe we feel, how open we are to receiving, how capable we are of tolerating abundance without unconsciously contracting away from it. His answer, documented in one of the most important books the last 30 years, is both more precise and more hopeful than most people expect. The body keeps the score. It keeps every unprocessed experience, every unfelt emotion, every moment of overwhelm that was survived rather than integrated, as a physical pattern in muscle, breath, posture, and nervous system tone. And those patterns determine not just your physical health, but your capacity for joy, for connection, for financial expansion, for the full inhabiting of the life your mind has been planning. Today we go into the body. The Vitality Edit begins here. Welcome to the Vitality Edit by CosmiReads, Series 3. If you completed the Wealth Edit, you already have 8 frameworks for building a financially free life. Housel gave you the psychology of the money story. Sincero gave you the energy of aligned action. Kiyosaki gave you the architecture of assets. Ecker gave you the blueprint running beneath every financial decision. Clayson gave you the ancient laws. Robbins gave you the game. Swart gave you the neuroscience, the brain beneath the practice, and Perkins gave you the most important question of all. What is the life you are building all of this for? The Vitality Edit now answers the question Swart left open. She showed us the brain. Van der Kolk now shows us the body the brain lives in, because you can have the most perfectly programmed reticular activating system, the most beautifully rewritten wealth file, the most precisely calculated freedom number. And if your nervous system is running a chronic pattern of contraction, threat response, and survival mode, your body will override every single one of them. Not because you lack knowledge, not because you lack strategy, because the body has a veto. And until the body feels safe enough to receive what the mind has been planning, the gap between intention and outcome will persist. This is the series that closes that gap at the level of breath, posture, nervous system, and the specific somatic practices that turn a contracted body into an open one. Heal it, feel it, live it. Before the framework, a moment with Van der Kolk himself. Because his journey into this research began not in a laboratory, but in a clinical room with veterans returning from Vietnam who could not explain why their bodies were still at war after the fighting had stopped. They were home. They were safe. The rational mind knew it. The body did not. The nervous system was still running the same alarm patterns, the same threat responses, the same survival programs that had kept them alive in combat, in the total absence of the original threat. van der Kolk spent the next 4 decades asking why. What he discovered fundamentally changed how we understand trauma, how we understand the relationship between experience and physiology, and how we understand why some people seem to move through life with an open receiving posture, while others, regardless of how much they intellectually understand about abundance and manifestation, seem to be running a background program of contraction that no amount of thinking can override. The body keeps the score is not a metaphor. It is a precise description of a neurobiological process. The body literally scores, records, stores, and reruns every experience of overwhelm that was not processed and integrated at the time it occurred. And those scores shape everything: how you breathe, how you hold yourself, how you respond to opportunity, how much you can tolerate before you unconsciously create a reason to contract. The first key insight is the one that reframes everything that follows, and van der Kolk states it with 40 years of clinical evidence behind it. Trauma is not what happened to you. Trauma is what happened inside you as a result of what happened to you. This distinction is everything. It means that trauma is not reserved for catastrophic events. It is the normal human response to any experience that was too much, too fast, or too alone. Any moment of overwhelm that the nervous system survived but did not fully process, which means most of us are carrying more of it than we know. The anxiety before a financial conversation that feels disproportionate to the actual stakes. The freeze response when an opportunity requires a bold decision. The physical contraction that arrives when someone asks us to receive something, a compliment, a payment, an upgrade in circumstances that our nervous system has decided is beyond our current safety threshold. Ecker called this the blueprint. Swart called it a neural pathway. Van der Kolk calls it a somatic imprint, a pattern held in the body itself, below the level of conscious thought, that generates automatic physical responses to situations that resemble the original, overwhelming experience. The manifestation implication is direct and urgent. You cannot think your way out of a somatic imprint. Murphy's affirmations work. Dispenza's elevated emotion works. But they work more fully, more quickly, and more permanently when the body they are being practiced in is a regulated nervous system rather than a contracted one. Simone was a 37-year-old marketing director who had been doing manifestation and mindset work for 3 years with genuine commitment. She had a morning practice, she had her wealth files, she had her vision board rebuilt as an action board after the wealth edit, and she had a pattern she could not break. Every time she approached the income level her freedom number required, she developed a physical tension response so severe it disrupted her sleep, flattened her creativity, and eventually produced a decision that returned her to a more familiar financial baseline. She had tried to think her way through it. She had tried to affirm her way through it. She had tried to visualize her way through it. What she had not tried was to listen to what the body was actually saying. She began working with a somatic therapist who helped her trace the physical tension response to a specific childhood experience, a period of financial instability in her family that her 10-year-old nervous system had encoded as expansion is dangerous, return to baseline is survival. That encoding had been running in her body for 27 years, not as a thought, as a physical pattern. Once she understood that the pattern was somatic and not strategic, the approach changed completely. and so did the outcome. The second key insight is the one that explains why the body's veto is so powerful, and why conventional talk therapy, affirmation practice, and even the most sophisticated cognitive reconditioning can sometimes feel like pushing against a wall that has no door. Van der Kolk identifies the role of the autonomic nervous system, specifically the Polyvagal System, as developed by Dr. Stephen Porges, in determining our baseline capacity for openness, connection, and receiving. The autonomic nervous system has three primary states: the ventral vagal state, the state of safety, social connection, openness, and expansion. This is the state in which you make your best decisions, receive most fully, create most freely, and inhabit your life most completely. The sympathetic activation state, the state of mobilization, fight or flight, urgency, and vigilance. This is the state in which many high achievers spend most of their professional lives, driven, productive, but fundamentally operating from a threat rather than an abundance orientation. And the dorsal vagal state, the state of shutdown, collapse, freeze, and disconnection. This is the state that arrives when the nervous system has been in sympathetic activation for too long without adequate regulation and recovery. The relationship between these states and financial manifestation is not metaphorical. The ventral vagal state, the state of safety, is the precise neurological condition required for the brain to register abundance as available rather than threatening. Sincero's universe co-creator operates through the ventral vagal system. Swartz RAS is most receptive in ventral vagal tone. Ecker's reconditioning works most deeply when the body receiving the new file is in a regulated state rather than a contracted one. Yemi was a 41-year-old entrepreneur who had built a successful consulting business entirely from sympathetic activation. Drive, urgency, the productive anxiety of someone who had learned that relaxation was risky and stillness was falling behind. Her business was successful. Her health was not. She had chronic fatigue, persistent digestive issues, and a quality of presence in her own life that she described as being slightly outside of herself at all times, watching from a distance rather than fully inhabiting. She read Van der Kolk and recognized herself in the description of someone whose nervous system had never learned that safety was a valid resting state. She began a daily practice of what Van der Kolk calls titrated ventral vagal activation, small, consistent doses of genuine physical safety, a 10-minute morning walk without her phone, 5 minutes of slow breathing before any significant business decision, weekly swimming, not for fitness, but for the specific sensory regulation that water provides the nervous system. Within 60 days, her sleep had improved measurably. Within 90 days, a quality of creative thinking she had not accessed in years had returned. She told me the most surprising thing was that her income did not decrease when she stopped operating from urgency. It increased because for the first time she was making decisions from a state of genuine clarity rather than managed anxiety. The third key insight is the one that Van der Kolk returns to throughout the entire book, and it is the insight that most directly bridges the neuroscience of the source with the somatic work of the body keeps the score. The body does not respond to narrative. It responds to experience. This is the reason you can understand intellectually that you are safe, abundant, and worthy of expansion, and still have your body behave as though none of those things are true. The body was not there for the affirmation session. It was there for every physical experience that preceded it. and it updates its patterns not through thought, but through embodied experience, through what it actually feels in real time. The practical implication is the one van der Kolk builds his entire clinical practice around. Healing happens through the body, not around it. Movement, breath, touch, rhythm, physical safety experienced in real time. EMDR, yoga, somatic experiencing. Not because these are pleasant additions to a mindset practice, but because they are the primary mechanism through which the body updates its stored patterns. Dispenza understood this. His elevated emotion practice, the full body inhabiting of the desired future state, is a somatic intervention, not just a cognitive one. When he instructs you to feel the feelings of your desired reality in your actual physical body, he is prescribing exactly what van der Kolk's research confirms. The body updates through felt experience, not through understanding. Elrod's miracle morning was never just a mental discipline. The exercise component, the silence component, the scribing component, these are somatic regulation practices that prepare the body to receive the cognitive work that follows. Nkechi was a 34-year-old nurse who had been practicing Dispenza's morning meditation for 18 months, with what she described as inconsistent results. Some mornings, the elevated emotion was genuinely accessible, and the day that followed felt aligned and generative. Other mornings, the practice felt like performing rather than inhabiting. She could not identify why the same practice produced such different results on different days. Van der Kolk's third insight gave her the answer. On the mornings the practice worked, she had slept adequately, woken without alarm, and spent 5 minutes breathing before beginning the meditation. Her nervous system was in ventral vagal tone, the state of genuine safety, before the cognitive work began. On the mornings it felt like performance, she had slept poorly, rushed the transition from sleep, and begun the meditation from a sympathetic activation baseline. The practice was identical. The body receiving it was different. She restructured her morning to include 10 minutes of somatic regulation, slow breathing, gentle movement, a warm drink taken in silence, before beginning any cognitive or visualization work. The consistency of her practice transformed within 2 weeks. Not because the practice changed, because the body doing the practice changed. The fourth key insight is the one that connects van der Kolk's somatic framework most directly to the financial and abundance work of the Wealth Edit. And it is also the one that will resonate most deeply with anyone who has ever wondered why their relationship with money feels somehow physical rather than purely conceptual. The window of tolerance. Van der Kolk identifies a neurological range within which the nervous system can process, integrate, and respond effectively to incoming experience. Above that window, in hyperarousal, the system is overwhelmed, reactive, and unable to think clearly. Below it, in hypoarousal, the system is shut down, dissociated, and unable to engage at all. Within the window, in the zone of regulation, the system is genuinely functional. It can receive new information, update its patterns, make aligned decisions, and tolerate the expansion that growth requires. The financial dimension of the window of tolerance is the one no wealth book before van der Kolk had ever mapped this precisely. Every time you approach a new income level, a new financial identity, a new degree of abundance that exceeds your nervous system's current window, the system moves toward its edges. Either hyperarousal, the anxiety, urgency, and sabotage that Sincero identified as the upper limit problem, or hypoarousal, the freeze, shutdown, and disconnection that looks like procrastination but is actually the nervous system protecting itself from unfamiliar territory. Widening the window of tolerance is the somatic equivalent of raising the financial thermostat. And the way you widen it is not through thought. It is through the accumulated experience of safely inhabiting states that were previously overwhelming, through the slow, consistent, body-based practice of learning that expansion is survivable. Adaze was a 29-year-old graphic designer who had been reading every book in both CosmiReads series and applying everything she had learned with genuine commitment. She had rewritten her wealth files. She had built her action board. She had automated her investments. She had calculated her freedom number. And she had a physical response to financial growth so consistent and so uncomfortable that she had begun to wonder whether she was fundamentally incompatible with abundance. Every time her income moved upward, a new client, a rate increase, a month of unusual success, she experienced what she described as a physical alarm. Not anxiety exactly, something more primitive. A full-body alert that something unfamiliar was happening and familiar ground needed to be found. She had been treating it as a mindset problem. Kolk showed her it was a nervous system problem. Specifically, her window of tolerance for financial expansion had been set narrow by early experiences of unpredictability around money. She began a program of graduated exposure, deliberately, gently, and consistently spending time in slightly expanded financial states without immediately contracting. She opened a higher yield savings account and looked at the balance every morning, not acting on it, just being with it, teaching her nervous system that this amount of money in her vicinity was safe. She raised her rate by 10%, less than the 60% Marcus had achieved, but at a pace her nervous system could integrate without triggering the alarm. She told me 6 months later that the most important financial work she had ever done had nothing to do with strategy. It had everything to do with teaching her body that expansion was safe. The fifth key insight is the one that closes the body keeps the score framework and opens the door to everything the Vitality Edit will build across the next 6 videos. The path back to the body is also the path forward into the life. Kolk's clinical evidence is overwhelming on this point. People who successfully integrate their somatic patterns do not just experience better physical health. They experience a qualitative transformation in how they inhabit their lives. Their capacity for connection deepens, their creativity expands, their tolerance for uncertainty increases, their ability to receive compliments, money, opportunities, love grows. Not because they have become different people, because they have become more fully themselves, less constrained by the automatic physical patterns of old experience, more available to the actual reality of the present moment. This is what Perkins was pointing at when he talked about life energy, the physical, relational, and vitality resources required to inhabit and experience fully rather than theoretically. Kolk shows us that life energy is not just a function of age. It is a function of nervous system regulation. A 40-year-old with a regulated nervous system inhabits their life more fully than a 30-year-old whose body is chronically running survival patterns. The Vitality Edit is the series that builds toward that regulation, video by video, layer by layer, from the body through the breath, through the inner voice, through the spiritual root, until the person arriving at their freedom number has a body as open to receiving it as the mind that built toward it. This is the work. It is physical. It is spiritual. And it is the most direct path to the life you have been building toward. Chidinma was a 46-year-old teacher who had spent most of her adult life feeling what she described as a step removed from her own experience, present in all the external facts of her life, less present in the felt reality of it. She worked, she saved, she built. She met her obligations with care and consistency, but the quality of aliveness she had glimpsed in rare moments of genuine presence, during travel, during creative work, during the occasional morning when everything simply felt right in her body, remained stubbornly intermittent rather than becoming the baseline. She read The Body Keeps the Score and began a practice Kolk recommends as foundational body awareness, not meditation in the traditional sense, simply noticing several times each day what was physically present in her body, not evaluating it, not trying to change it, just noticing. Where was there tension? Where was there ease? Where was she holding her breath? Where was she bracing? The practice seemed almost absurdly simple, given the complexity of what she was trying to address. What she discovered over 6 months was not simple at all. The noticing, the simple, consistent, non-judgmental act of bringing attention back to the body, began to change the body it was directed at. Tension that had been present for years began to soften. The quality of her breathing deepened, and the step-removed quality of her presence began to close. She told me the most transformative thing she ever did for her financial life, her creative life, and her actual experience of being alive was not a strategy. It was the decision to inhabit the body she had been living above. 5 ways to apply The Body Keeps the Score to your manifestation and abundance practice right now. 1. Add a somatic check-in to your miracle morning before any cognitive or visualization work begins. 2 minutes of slow breath, a gentle scan of where your body is holding tension. The question, is my nervous system in a state that can genuinely receive what I am about to practice? If the answer is not yet, give it 5 more minutes of regulation before you begin. 2. Identify your window of tolerance edge around financial expansion. What is the specific physical sensation that arrives when your income approaches unfamiliar territory? Name it. Give it a location in your body. Bring it out of the unconscious and into the observable, because you cannot work with a pattern you cannot see. 3. Begin a graduated exposure practice. Identify one financial state that is slightly beyond your current window of tolerance and spend 10 minutes each day simply being with it, without acting, without contracting, without immediately returning to the familiar. A savings balance slightly higher than comfortable, a rate quoted slightly higher than usual. The nervous system learns safety through repetition of survived expansion. 4. Restructure your morning so that somatic regulation precedes cognitive work. Elrod's miracle morning was always a somatic practice as much as a cognitive one. Exercise first, silence with body awareness second, scribing with felt presence third, visualization from a regulated baseline fourth. The order matters neurologically. The body that receives the cognitive work determines how deeply it lands. 5. Begin a daily body awareness practice. Not formal meditation, just noticing. 3 times each day, morning, midday, evening, spend 60 seconds asking your body what is physically present. No evaluation, no agenda, just the practice of returning attention to the instrument through which every experience of abundance must ultimately be received. Your 7-day Vitality Edit Challenge. Day 1. Add the somatic check-in to your morning practice today and notice what shifts in the quality of your visualization. Day 2. Identify your window of tolerance edge around financial expansion, name the physical sensation, and give it a location. Day 3. Begin the graduated exposure practice with one specific financial state that is slightly beyond your current comfort. Day 4. Restructure your morning sequence so that somatic regulation precedes all cognitive work. Day 5. Begin the daily body awareness practice. 3 check-ins, 60 seconds each, pure noticing. Day 6. Identify one area of your life where you have been living above your body rather than in it. One relationship, one creative practice, one financial area where full presence has been absent. Day 7. Run your complete miracle morning with Kolk's insight. As the foundation, the body is the instrument through which every experience of abundance must pass. Regulate it first, then fill it. Drop one word in the comments that describes what you discover when you stop thinking about your body and start listening to it. Just one word. I read and reply to every single one. The Body Keeps the Score is not a book about what has gone wrong. It is a book about what is still possible for anybody, at any age, at any stage of the journey. When you bring the same intelligence, the same intentionality, and the same willingness to build that you have brought to every other aspect of your financial and spiritual life, to the one foundation all of it rests on. Your body. Regulate it. Inhabit it. Trust it. The life you have been building toward requires it. Hit the like button if this opens something in you. Subscribe and hit the bell because video 2 of the Vitality Edit is Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. And it will change every choice you make about rest for the rest of your life. Your free downloads are in the description. Thank you for being part of CosmiReads. Heal it, feel it, live it. See you in the next one.